Welcome to Grow Your Power, and I am your host, Anne Greenfield. My last two shows have focused on understanding women and the feminine, so I thought I'd like to even it up today with a show on men and the masculine. And in our culture, I would like to see women and men respect and honor each other more, beyond the stereotypes. It would probably help men to honor and respect themselves and other men more also, by seeing past the stereotypes. So today I have 4 men here in the studio with me, and they have bravely offered to speak on what men have to say about themselves. Let me introduce Brad, first of all. Can you tell us something about yourself, Brad?
Hi, Anne. Thanks for inviting me to join this show. I consider myself an elder in the community. I have 2 adult daughters and a young grandson. Proud to be a grandfather. Professionally, I am an engineer, and I remotely run my company in Northeast Illinois. I love living in Sonoma County. I'm also active in a number of local not-for-profits, and I definitely have a desire to help youth. I teach youth skiing and sailing, and I'm also an educator in the community.
Hi, thanks for having me as well. My name is Winston Friedman, and I'm 31 years old. I work in the solar development business. I am not a father. I also work with Brad actually in one of his nonprofit organizations as a volunteer with the Circle Up Sonoma, and I am part of an intentional community where we, I don't know how to say it right now. We live together and we create more through sharing. And I get to be uncle to 7 kids while I'm there, which is fun.
So this is Devin Hemmings. I'm 35 years old. I've lived in Sonoma County for the last 5 years, doing various vocations all around landscaping. Right now I'm a landscape cartographer, so we offer landscape-based maps. I also live in an intentional community, and I'm involved with that on various levels. And my partner has a 6-year-old who I get to be part of her life, and I also have a few nieces, so I have some kids in my life, but I'm not a dad. And that's kind of my basic story.
Hi, my name is Jeffrey Savage. Most of my friends used to be older, now they're mostly younger, so I guess I am now officially considered an elder. I've worked for the past 40 years as a personal property appraiser. I appraise art, antiques, silver, jewelry, and so forth. I have a web design business. I've always been someone who's worked for myself, so I guess I'm a pretty independent sort. I have a lot of experience with marriage, having been married 3 times, the last one lasting 32 years, which was cut short, unfortunately.
So I came up with some questions here to ask everybody, and I would appreciate everyone answering them, but you don't have to either, just what feels right to you. So masculine traits. What masculine traits do you see in yourself? And could you describe a specific experience with it? Or what trait would you like to cultivate?
I got one.
All right, Winston.
So one thing that, before I jump in, I just want to say the masculine traits doesn't mean man or woman necessarily for me.
Right.
I think men and women both have all the traits within them. and also even just man and woman isn't so clear anymore to me. I think there's a spectrum of gender in the world, so I just wanted to throw that out there. But one of the masculine traits that I feel like, or that I attribute to masculinity, is like integrity and creating structure and doing what you say you're gonna do. This is the way it is, and it's not so flow oriented, it's more solid and structured, and that's something that I appreciate about myself. I don't like it when people are late, because I'm sitting there waiting and my time isn't being respected. For me, it feels that way. I don't feel respected when people don't do what they say they're going to do, and so I try to do that, and obviously I don't always do it, but that's something that I pride myself on.
Thank you.
This is Brad, and I'd like to offer leadership as a masculine trait that, as Winston mentioned, there's some tendency towards fluid genders here, so even women can offer leadership capabilities, certainly, but that's typically found in a male. And so leadership might mean creating something or guiding a group of people that don't necessarily have a specific goal in mind.
Okay, I think I have one. This is Devin. So I'm not sure quite how to put it, but I'm thinking of holding space as a masculine trait in sort of a tender, caring way, where I allow other people to be who they are and empower others to share their gifts in the world.
This is Jeff. I think I may hold somewhat of a contrarian view regarding masculine and feminine traits, because although there are males and females, I tend to agree with Devin that the concepts of masculinity and femininity are very fluid. And you can't separate talking about masculinity and femininity without placing them in the context of a particular culture. There are cultures where what we consider masculine would not be considered particularly masculine.
Could you give us what you see as a culturally held masculine trait in our culture?
Oh, absolutely. I have here in my hand, which the audience can't see, a felt sort of Western wear hat. And when I put it on my head, I must say I feel more masculine. But I know this is coming from my conditioned mind. There's the Marlboro man on the horse with the cowboy hat. So I'm not immune to feeling certain things are masculine when I do them. But they're activities.
How does it make you feel when you wear that hat?
More powerful, like I stand out, things like that. Whereas when I wear a baseball cap, I have a whole different feeling.
Mm-hmm. Well, this leads right into another question about archetypes. And what masculine or feminine archetype, what you consider masculine or feminine, do you identify with or wish to cultivate? And I know, Brad, you know something about the basic masculine archetypes.
There's 4 basic archetypes that I'm familiar with through the Mankind Project. That's the lover, the warrior, the magician, and the king. archetypes, and I attribute myself to all of them, but predominantly the king archetype.
Come round my corner, oh, I didn't feel.
And can you tell me just some quality that the king has?
My perception of the king archetype is someone who's able to listen to all different sides of a matter and guide a group to make the right decision, what's in the best interest of the group. Not necessarily a dictator, somebody who's a facilitator, a good listener.
The archetype that I've been trying to cultivate as of late is the wild man. Somebody that just jumps into an ice cold lake just 'cause, or jumps off of a cliff or something. Is silly and growls and runs around naked into lakes. Just being wild and playful, and that's something that I'm trying to cultivate.
Everybody get in the groove and let the good times roll. I'm gonna stay here till I soothe my soul, if it takes all night long. Yeah.
So there's a couple that come to mind. One is the explorer, who is always seeking new places, new information, new experiences, and deeply fears the mundane. And this kind of coincides with the last question. There's also the warrior, which I feel is a very masculine trait that could be held by men or women, because the warrior is a protector, and I feel like that's one of the strongest masculine qualities, is to protect others.
There are many archetypes. I would only say that I would strive to cultivate a balance between all of them. Whenever I find myself lacking in a particular quality, I like to take a look at that and see how I can bring that up a little bit. And when I find that I'm dominant in a particular quality, just for an example, I identify with being a hero. Well, that has a lot of good aspects to it, but it can also be very damaging if it's not balanced. If one is always caretaking others, that can become a very isolating type of experience. So I strive for balance.
All right, thank you. Well, you mentioned vulnerability. Can you all tell me about a specific time when you felt very vulnerable?
Yesterday? Every day? This is Jeff. I feel vulnerable every day in my relationships with my... It's difficult to... I don't like significant other or lover. We decided on co-creator, my co-creator, in terms of being able to say what's on my mind, what I'm feeling, along with expressing that to the people I live with. And there's always the danger that somebody's going to take something, quote, the wrong way and become defensive or just not really honor the fact that you're trying to communicate in as honest and open and vulnerable way as possible. So that's in terms of communication. In terms of my life, sometimes it just feels like a complete mess and I don't know what to do. And that's a very vulnerable position to be in, not knowing, in that state of not knowing. So I find myself in a state of not knowing quite often.
So I feel most vulnerable, and I could probably give a couple real examples. In sharing my feelings with someone, particularly my partner, significant other, whatever you call them, just saying something like, I'm scared, or I feel hurt, or something like that, is vulnerable, and you don't really know how it's going to go. And as a man in this culture, it feels almost like we're not really allowed to have those feelings or express them always. And it can go well, but it can also backfire. And so it's kind of this tension between, is it safe? Can I share my feelings? Or do I have to be this like stoic, classical John Wayne kind of person or something, which I have no idea how to be. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely identify with what both of you all were just saying. Not knowing is really hard for me, for sure. I like to be right all the time. And I'm struggling. I'm working on not having to be right all the time. Or at least make other people wrong. That's no fun. And also, yeah, sharing my feelings. But also, I was just like realizing like I was feeling vulnerable just here in this conversation. I just spoke out to the world with my name attached to it that like I like running to lakes naked. Like, you know, that's, I don't know. I don't like people that know all of my inner thoughts necessarily. I feel like it could be used against me or something. Like I realized that I almost never post anything onto social media about myself because it's like this fear that, oh, somebody's gonna know something about me now and I don't even know who they are or what they'll do with that information. So yeah, the not knowing, it's like what's the consequence of me sharing myself? If I don't share myself, then I'm not vulnerable. And specifically in the last 3 years, I've begun to actively try to be vulnerable because I actually have found lots of benefit to it. Mainly range of emotion and connection with people, and yeah, which brings me fulfillment, to be able to experience different sides of myself more freely. So I feel that like sharing the different parts of myself is really fulfilling.
And it does bring you feeling closer to another person.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So I can resonate with all the other men. Predominantly, my most vulnerable time is when I am sharing a feeling. And you don't know how people are going to respond to it, but what I have found to be the case is predominantly it draws people closer to me.
I think this is Jeff, just jumping in because we've all used the word vulnerability or being vulnerable, but we haven't even really talked about what that means to us because, I guess for myself, being vulnerable means opening myself up to the possibility of being hurt in some way. And I would distinguish between different types of hurt. There's emotional hurt. Emotional hurt I can deal with pretty well because it doesn't have any repercussions beyond my own head. There's legal hurt. You don't want to be vulnerable legally to people and share something that could come back on you later. There's physical vulnerabilities. as time has gone on, I've learned very hard lessons in terms of choosing who to be vulnerable with and when to not I personally consider it a weakness not to be vulnerable. But I've had to embrace what I consider to be a weakness sometimes because there are people out there who want to hurt me.
I think what you're saying just makes me think like it's just a risk every time. For me, every time it's a risk. You're revealing yourself. You don't know what's gonna happen, and you might get hurt. Chances are you will get hurt. But the great risk is the great reward too. I just came out of a 14-year relationship with my now ex-wife. We were very vulnerable with each other, and I, laid my heart out, and she did to hers also, and ending it was very painful, but wow, so worth it.
Some masculine traits can be seen as toxic, and I wonder if anyone can speak about that. Seeing certain traits in yourself that could be toxic or positive.
Aggression,
okay,
to me is by far the most significant trait that can be toxic, but it's what I need to bring out sometimes in order to get things done.
Well, if toxic means poisonous, then toxic masculinity would be ways of acting that are poisonous to oneself and those around you. Mm-hmm. And in a patriarchy, there's a lot of toxic masculinity because the center of power, balance of power, rests with men who make most of the decisions. So I would certainly agree with Brad that aggression or the feeling that somebody always has to be in control, which means controlling relationships, controlling politics, controlling society, controlling that sense of control and not allowing anyone to see that, well, perhaps in this case we don't know what to do, but we act as though we do. That to me is a very toxic trait of masculinity as conceived in most Western cultures.
So men, we start off as boys, and as boys we experience a lot of programming and male oppression at a young age, sort of stereotypes and what's expected of us, and we get hurt a lot by other men and through sexism, homophobia, aggression, dominance, and then without knowing it kind of internalize those things and act them out in the world. I like so much what you said about just like control, like this thing about control, where men are controlling situations that they actually don't understand, or they're not allowing other people to empower themselves, for example. And in myself, I've seen that come to be, and I'm not trying to be toxic or something like that. I learned, okay, as a man, you have to like be able to take control of the situation. Or it was just more subtle, though. It was like a certain way of thinking that we accept, that things have to be linear, logical, someone has to be in control. and then kind of like getting irritable if things are kind of undefined or something like that, and then using that type of thinking to control the situation or impose our masculinity as the dominant paradigm, whether it's in a community, a family, a relationship. I see it time and time again in politics, in a company business structure. There's almost always some sort of masculine type person dominating the situation.
The one toxic masculine trait that I feel like I've embodied the most is numbness. Not allowing anything to affect me emotionally. I definitely internalized that at a young age. And so that shows up as not caring very much about other people's feelings also. Like, I want to sometimes, but sometimes I'm just not registering everything that's happening around me, so I become numb to other people's feelings and my own. So that's something that I've definitely struggled with, and I think a lot of men do. And inside of that numbness, it allows for lots of bad things to happen that don't need to. And the other one that I want to come back to is this has to do with the control, and it's like fixating on the way it should be, and knowing that you're right about that, or knowing that I'm right about something. When I'm right, somebody else is wrong, and I know the solution. It needs to go this way, and it's just a cycle that lends itself to creating losers. And that's not the way that society has to be run.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if there's a positive side to control. I can definitely see and hear from you the toxic side. But
I think the positive side of control is being able to control oneself. If one can control if one can master one's own emotions and actions, then we don't put other people at risk. It's when we can't control ourselves that we want to control other people, because it's easier to control the other people and get them to suit what we need rather than control ourselves and see how we can serve others.
One of the positive masculine traits, I think, for control is, again, around integrity, which is like creating boundaries. I think is really a great trait. There's healthy boundaries all the time. And I do it, and I create boundaries with myself. I'm cultivating this wild man that I talked about. It goes out and plays in nature, and doesn't think about responsibilities or anything like that. But I create like a specific time for that for myself, because I know that if I'm acting that out, that I'm not taking care of my business and all the responsibilities I have in my life. So I think creating boundaries is really good, and structure is really a beautiful thing to have. It creates efficiency, productivity. It's very generative.
So control, when you use that specific word, it's hard to attribute it to something positive. Boundaries, I like that word. Clarity, I like that. But control, well, especially though, like when you use control with people, that's where I get troubled. But control of a situation or an object, that makes sense. If you can control a computer, or you can control your car or something like that, those things need to be controlled, or yourself. But I can't think of something positive about controlling another person. That's really hard. I guess setting a boundary with another person, like you were saying, like, no, I'm not okay with that. But that's not really control. That's just saying that's a boundary. So there's a difference. I guess I'm just saying there's a difference between controlling and boundaries.
And I think also, to be specific, like creating a boundary for yourself and then being able to stick to that. Mm-hmm. You can cross into murky moral territory easily because you're tempted to do something maybe that isn't great. Like an example, a couple weeks ago, I was out having drinks with friends, and I got a little more drunk than I normally do, and so was this woman, and we ended up making out together, but like we were both clearly drunk, so I didn't want to cross over beyond that. It just didn't seem like a good boundary to cross. We weren't making clear decisions at that point. We were both drunk. So I held that boundary for myself because that's my own personal standard. But I was very tempted not to. I was really turned on at the time.
Yeah, control doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. I mean, if you are in control of a meeting, for instance, and there are certain rules that everyone has agreed to follow, or if everyone starts speaking simultaneously and you lose, if you're heading that meeting, if you quote lose control of the meeting, it can descend into chaos. So especially in terms of group dynamics, sometimes control can be a good thing, but it can also be a bad thing. So if somebody is over-controlling and doesn't allow for a variety of opinions and voices to be heard, because it's to suit their own agenda, that goes back to controlling others to make up for some lack in oneself, I would say, is toxic control versus controlling a situation that really benefits everyone. But I think especially in a situation where you have a crowd of men who have a lot of toxic masculinity in them, it's good to be able to control that group.
Have you felt denied as a man from experiencing anything in your life?
It feels like I've been denied the support of people to, to be vulnerable, the support of the community or family to really just express myself, or to fall out of the stereotypical male role. For example, like to cry in public, for example. If a woman might be able, or a girl might be able to do that, but a boy or a man will be told, don't do that. So there's certain kind of expectations that come with being a male.
I would say my experience is really similar to Devin's of, shutting down emotion to not feel outcast in society, definitely.
Sometimes I miss the opportunity to have nurtured my children when they were young. So I still carry that. They're in their mid-20s now, and I never had the ability to do that. Their mom was always there for them, and it worked, and they're very good children. They're adults now. The other thing, this might come out a little odd, but I'd sure love a woman to take care of me like I take care of my woman. And so there's that. And I don't necessarily have a strong feeling about that, but I'd sure like to see what that's like.
Do you have any specific aspects of caring that you're talking about?
I'd like an opportunity to be the domestic engineer, to take care of the home.
Could you repeat the question again?
Have you felt denied as a man from experiencing anything in your life?
So many things. I mean,
Right.
ever since I was a child and I was given blue things instead of pink things, or given a truck instead of a doll. Why should I get a truck instead of a doll? There's denial right there of a whole range of expression. We're so conditioned from birth in this society, in all societies really, but in this society that men are supposed to be this way and women are supposed to be this way. I mean, it's changing, thank goodness, but I grew up in the 50s with a Leave It to Beaver kind of ideal family, where June was in the kitchen and whatever his name was, Fred or whoever, was out working, bringing home the bacon or the tofu today. I often watch my co-creator putting on earrings, and I think to myself, why can't men in this society just choose a different pair of earrings every day? I mean, that's just a very simple thing, but hey, that looks like fun, and some men do, but you have to deal with a lot of prejudice just in terms of how we dress. Women can wear pants generally in this society, but men rarely wear dresses, and if they do, they get a lot of stares. So there are all sorts of ranges of expression that men are constrained with in this society. I mean, in terms of crying, a good example. I mean, we could probably come up with 100 examples in the next hour, just throwing them out, of ways that we're denied expression, really expression. And that's very sad that our society is so regimented and there's such a mass mind of what's acceptable and what's not, that if we have an impulse to do something, it takes a lot of guts. I have to think, okay, am I secure enough in being a man that I could wear an earring even?
Something else that came to mind is I look at the women in my life and I see so many of them really supporting and loving each other and being close. Like, women they just have this bond with each other, and they often have so many friends. I mean, I don't mean to be stereotypical, but that's just what I see, is that's what's common. And they're open with each other. They talk about things, and I feel like as a man, I haven't really gotten to experience that very much with other men. Like, I feel isolated. I feel like I have to just work hard and make money, and And it's really hard to connect with the other men in my life because they're doing the same thing. And we haven't been given the tools or allowed, or somehow it doesn't feel accessible. And I see so many men wanting that too, wanting to connect with each other, but for some reason we can't. And I think there's some good stuff happening with like men's groups and men's initiation. That's another thing that I feel like I haven't gotten as a male in this society, is like an initiation. We don't really have one. We have high school graduation, you get your license, your car license, you know, you turn 21, you can drink beer, but I kind of wish that our society bonded men together and gave us an initiation.
Sometimes I imagine, what would it be like in this society if all of the traits that we now consider masculine were considered feminine, and all of the traits that we consider feminine were considered the sign of being a real man? I mean, if vulnerability, if being able to cry, if being willing to go with the flow and give up control, what if those were held out to be ideals of masculinity? I mean, it could be there is no inherent, in my opinion, and the opinion of most anthropologists, there is no inherent masculine trait. It depends on the culture that we're brought up in. I started looking into what is masculinity in different cultures, and I mean, we consider competitiveness to be a very masculine trait in this society. And there were two tribes. One was the Maasai tribe in Africa, and the other was a group of people called the Khasa in India. One was patriarchal, the Maasai, and the Khasa were matrilineal. Patriarchy and matriarchy. And in this large group of people that in each tribe, the anthropologist had them throw a basketball and try and get it into a hoop as a sort of a competition. And in the Maasai tribe, the vast majority of men wanted to do it, but a small minority of women wanted to do it. And in the Khasa group, where it was matrilineal, a larger percentage of women were competitive and wanted to do it, and a smaller percentage that the men who wanted to do it were in a minority. So there's an example where things are topsy-turvy. And again, it brings us back to this idea of the conditioned mind, that we're so conditioned from birth. We're put in emotional straitjackets from birth. That's the example that's given to us, and it's really tragic in a lot of ways. And it's wonderful to have 4 men here willing to be vulnerable and looking at ways where we can change that and get rid of that toxicity that society has imposed on us.
What you're talking about reminded me of something that my dad said to me recently. He said, we were talking about some guy traversed the South Pole on his own or something like that for like 3 weeks on his own. And just totally incredible feat of physical exertion. And what he said is he was displaying the masculine trait of transcending limits, and I just thought that was an interesting thing. But like, maybe it's just a trait and it could be different somewhere else. But the idea is like, I can get this ball in the hoop 100 times in a row, and like that display there's something beautiful about that expression, but also when it's taken too far, it's totally crazy too. I'm gonna be the best no matter what. But transcending limits is also really beautiful.
I wonder if there's like a biological sexual element to this too, of men competing for women to mate with.
Yeah, I'm the strongest.
Yeah, like showing their strength and somehow that being attributed to sexual virility.
Being a man, a lot of it has to do with our bodies. We have usually more just strength as a man. Like, I'm just naturally strong. I have big hands, and women are totally strong. It's just, I've noticed that men usually have larger biceps, larger upper body, and then we also have a penis that we can penetrate with, and that's a lot different than having something that gets penetrated. I'm speaking bluntly here, but I think that really differentiates men and women. It's a lot different to have something that you're going out there and you have a penis and you want to put your penis into something than having something that, having a vagina, then you're always trying to make sure that you have control. Like, women don't want, they're going to be more choosy about who they're with, because for women, having to like carry a child for 9 months is a huge deal. A man could just go get somebody. I'm talking about historically, like even if you go back to cavemen, could just go like impregnate like 50 women and not have to take care of any of those children. Whereas each one of those women would have to go through the whole gestation period, give birth, and raise that child. So it's very different in that way to be a man and to be a woman.
Mm-hmm. All right, here's kind of an intimate question. Can you describe a relationship you have recently enjoyed, and why? What value did you get from it? A relationship with a man, a woman, a child, a plant, or an animal.
I guess with my current relationship of about the past 5 years, what I enjoy about it the most is of no preconditions. I've learned to, I think I finally learned to really listen without judgment and not dismissing something that she says because it's not coming from me. The ability to listen and really be in the moment and say, oh wow, that's a cool idea. Maybe we could do it that way. From a very early time in our relationship, I posed a question to her. I said, we were walking on the beach, and I said, which would you rather do? Walk into the wind and have the hard part first and have the easy part second coming back? Or have the easy part first and have the hard part coming back? I saw it as just a binary choice. And it was kind of a test to see, which was she going to choose, the hard part or the easy part first? And she said, well, why don't we walk halfway into the easy part first, and then walk back twice as far in the hard part and come back and end with the easy part. And when I heard that, I knew she was the one for me. Because she got me out of that binary thinking, and that in that moment I just learned so much, and saw my conditioned mind unravel. That it was, it's that type of experience that I really value in a relationship, being with somebody who can just get me out of my rut of thinking, but not in a confrontational way, not in a manipulative way, or in a way even with any goal.
I'm just thinking back to this last weekend. I went kayaking with my old friend from college, and we were out on Tamales Bay, and just as we put our paddles into the water turned a light blue color, and the bioluminescence were out in the water. And wow, I felt so connected to the water, and there was a meteor shower above and bioluminescence below. I'm with this friend that I've known for 12 years. There was a bird colony out on Hog Island, hundreds and hundreds of cormorants nesting on this island. It was just a magical moment. I felt connected to all of it, and felt present. And I think maybe that's what you were kind of referring to. Like a tiny piece of algae that, when stirred in warm water, creates blue light, is a very different form of life than how I live my life. But all of a sudden I put my hand in the water and I have some relationship to it, and I get to see what it's like to be a blue light for a little bit.
Nice.
And I get my friend's perspective on what he sees when he sees the blue lights, and so I see these different perspectives, and when I'm present to it and not saying, oh, it needs to be, a green light, and why isn't this algae green? What can I do to make this algae green? And then I'm not having fun.
So I was lucky enough to, last week I had 8 days in the mountains. More particularly, we were in Kings Canyon, John Muir Wilderness. We did this awesome loop, and by we, I mean myself and my partner. It was just, it was incredible. And there's one day in particular where her and I, so we had hiked already probably 30 miles over a couple of passes, and so we needed a break, and we took one day. We found this beautiful spot that we camped, and we were just on the river, her and I, not really doing anything, or just doing what we felt like all day long, and just connecting. At one point we sat on a blanket on the beach, and she taught me how to make a pouch out of leather, which is something I had never done before. And I just felt like so happy and blessed to be there with her in that beautiful setting, learning something that she's been doing for a while and sharing that part of herself with me. And I was like, actually, this is really fun. I think I'm going to have to start making more leather pouches.
I went to a music festival earlier this summer, High Sierra Music Festival, and on the last night I ended up dancing with this woman. It was the last show, and we danced for the entire show. It was like 2 hours non-stop dancing with each other. So fun. For that, I was playing the masculine role. I was the main lead. The next weekend, she invited me to go to World Music Festival with her. But that time, she started playing a little bit more lead role, and I had to take the follow role. It's not how I've normally danced, and so it was really a stretch for me. But it was still really enjoyable because I just went with it. When she started switching over into that, and I was still trying to lead, but she was trying to lead, it did not work well at all. And sometimes when I felt like, well, it's my turn to lead, then she would have to do the same, and we would go back and forth with that.
I'm really enjoying my new love and the communication that we have with each other, and it's very rewarding, and I feel that while we each have an autonomous identity, we support each other's growth and lives and what we each want to pursue. And I've never had that kind of relationship, and so it's a very loving relationship. And the odd thing to me is how, where is this going to go, and how could I love someone even more? And every day it just gets stronger and stronger. It's infinite.
How about, can you think of one thing you would have liked your father or your parents to say to you as a young boy that they did not?
I would have liked to have heard that I was unconditionally loved. I felt judged, even to this day.
That's a good one. Me too.
For me, I would have wanted more explicit outlet questions of, how does that make you feel? How are you feeling right now? And just safe places to express my inner self.
That would have been nice.
Yeah,
Growing
me too.
up
On
to
that
hear,
one too.
how do you feel about that? I mean, I feel really fortunate in the parents that I was raised by. But my father was very emotionally closed, and my mother carried the emotions for the family, pretty typical in a lot of families. But I think, as having been a step-parent myself, and been around children who I've loved, I think one of the best things that an older person can do for a child or a younger person is to say, I don't know. My parents always, and most parents, they want to hide the fact that they don't know what the hell they're going to do about so many things, because they want to protect their kids. But in protecting the kid grows up thinking, oh, the parents know everything. And when they discover that the parents don't know everything, it can really cause a lot of shock and problems. Like, well, you feel almost lied to your whole life, that parents and adults inhabit this world where they don't know what to do a lot of times. And if that uncertainty or that turmoil can be shared safely with children, you don't want to overburden them, but just to let them know that there are cracks, there are some cracks that are okay to experience, and you're not always going to know what to do, and maybe we can find out together, something like that.
There's that vulnerability again.
Vulnerability, it would be a game changer for so many people.
Well, I wonder if there's anything else any of you would like to say before we end our show today.
I'll say this since it came up from you, Devin, the lack of initiation. 3 years ago, I went through a men's initiation through the Mankind Project, the New Warrior training adventure, and it changed my life in a really positive way. It's the safest I've ever felt in a group of men, and it allowed me to be extremely vulnerable and work through a lot of stuff for myself. And that process led me to getting involved in weekly or monthly men's groups, and I feel like if every man did the New Warrior training adventure, the world would be a much better place. And you don't have to do that training. There's a million trainings you could do, but start that inquiry. Go for it.
I would say the most important thing would be to examine the conditioned mind. And I think a lot of times men's groups are good for this in that it gets men to challenge the assumptions about what it is to be a man and often stretch beyond those self-imposed boundaries. But eventually, I'd like to see a world where the masculine and feminine are not so much emphasized, because there are, and rather the qualities that we consider masculine or feminine can be enhanced without labeling them as belonging to one sex or another. So courage, compassion, caring, vulnerability, strength, stamina, all of those things I see in both men and women. And I think a discussion of what is masculine, what is feminine is a good start to examining our core beliefs, but eventually, hopefully, in the service of getting beyond that to a more integrated way of being in the world. And just one last thing, these are all my perspectives. It feels funny to be asked to be on a panel of men and masculinity and I know. All I know is my own experience, so I just want to put that out there. I don't pretend to speak for anybody other than me.
That's really clear, and that's why I have 4 of you here, just to show that there are 4 different men in the world who think a little differently and can be seen as something besides stereotypes. And I personally feel really close to all you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
We love you, Annie.
Oh, thank you. And this was Grow Your Power for today. That's KOWS 92.5 FM.